You're listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcast. Thank you everyone for tuning in for another episode of Let's Talk Trio. I'm very excited to have this episode. You're going to hear it here in a little bit. It's the interview with Dr. Oscar Felix, the much highly anticipated interview with the man himself, the man, the myth, the legend. Dr. Oscar Felix is joining us in the program. I just wanted to say thank you to all of our supporters currently listening Let's Talk Trio. If you're downloading or streaming the episode, we really greatly appreciate it. I'd also like to thank the Underwriter. The University of Northern Colorado, the graduate school, has picked us up for ad sponsorship. So we're the University of Northern Colorado, the graduate programs. So at the very beginning of the episode or the very end of the episode, you'll hear an ad. Please check them out. We really greatly appreciate their sponsorship. Now, this interview was very exciting for many reasons. For me, it gave me an opportunity to interview a person whose name I've been hearing in the trio world for a very long time. When I first started off as a professional, I would hear his name float around, and as fate would have it, I was able to sit down with him and talk to him about his experiences, his travel, what college education has taught him. So this man is experienced. He knows exactly what it means to be a first-generation student, and his experiences working with TRIO programs and with the Council of Opportunity in Education. So for me, it was a huge honor to have Dr. Oscar Felix on the program, and it's just been an amazing interview. Again, you're all in for a treat. This interview was fantastic to record. The conversation was very laid back, and Dr. Oscar Felix, again, a very honorable man, did a lot of wonderful work for TRIO and has impacted the lives of many, many students. So I look forward to you, the audience, looking at this episode in particular, and giving me feedback about what you thought about having a TRIO legend like that on the podcast. And on the next episode, we will have the panelists for the first generation event happening. So we'll have that event happening soon. We'll be talking to various panelists for that particular episode. But what I wanted to say really quickly is my appreciation to you, the audience. This podcast would not be possible without you. I've been hearing great things so far, positive feedbacks from colleagues and from friends and family members who've listened to the podcast. And all I can say is I'm very appreciative, very happy with the feedback. I'm open to critiques. I'm open to criticisms as well. You know, I'm not the most perfect interviewer, but I try my best. I will continue churning out episodes. You're all in for a treat, though, for this month. We have 3 interviews lined up. This one for Dr. Oscar Felix, which is a treat in itself. Then the panel interview or the panel discussion, and then we'll also have a couple more interviews from TRIO folks as well. And the month of January looks like it's going to be picking up. Quick programming update. So we were meaning to record the episode for the Upward Bound program here at Colorado State University. We ran into a schedule crunch, and we decided that it was best just to reschedule, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to bring that episode to you in January. In the meantime, we're going to be looking for more interviewees, more people to share their stories here on Let's Talk Trio. So again, I hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll see you at the end. So I appreciate you doing this podcast episode. I've been looking forward to interview someone with your caliber to kind of talk about the TRIO programs, but not only that, to expand that and talk about first generation.
Go on.
I looked up your bio. So I had to do a little bit of research on you, and saw that you have been involved with the TRIO programs for quite a while before you became VP or executive assistant for VP.
Right.
And then you transitioned to helping first generation students and expanded from there.
Yeah.
That's amazing work.
Right. Well, let me tell you, as I'm celebrating 30 years at CSU, I got here in the summer of '88, and I can tell you what I remember about that summer. There were these fires at Yellowstone. It was a huge fire. So every evening, it was a lot of smoke. So when the sun was setting, it created this sort of beautiful reddish sunsets, and that led me to believe that this is what they call it Colorado. Because, and then I did some research, and that not only because of the smoke, but for other reasons, the sunsets had this tint of red. Because in Colorado is Spanish for red.
That's true.
So that was my introduction, and I got here in that summer, and then by that fall, I was working with Trio. And what gave me the skills and the experience is that as an undergrad, I worked at a financial aid office. So that's why the search committee said, "Oh, hey, you know how to help students get through that," and it was a brand new grant, brand new. They just received it, so I was very, very lucky to be part of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So who is Dr. Oscar Felix outside of CSU? Who are you? Like some of your passions, some of the things that you like.
Yeah.
What are your things? What are you outside of CSU?
Okay, as a citizen, I like to run. I like to jog around, and I've been doing that for many years. And I love to travel. It's just my passion, and I'll talk about that later. How I have connected my love of travel, connecting that to first generation and Pell students, so that they can gain that experience, because it has done so much for me. As a person, I am the son of a tuna fisherman, and my dad fished tuna back in the day, in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And first, it was with line. It wasn't nowadays with a catcher with a net. Back then, line fishing, yeah. Wow. And if you ever see videos of it on YouTube, they're just like one after the other. They're just cranking them in.
Yeah.
And so that's how he built his sense of who he was, and as a man who only completed the 5th grade, but able to have a job that it was pretty labor intensive. He built a lot of muscle, but without an education, that was how he was able to give us. And we lived in Mexico back then, sort of like a middle class sort of lifestyle. So it meant a lot to him. Now, when we moved to the United States when I was 11, soon after that, he became ill. He had to have open heart surgery, and then the tuna industry by then in Southern California was moving out to other places in the world, right? So all of a sudden, he lost that. He lost his job. He lost his identity, and it was really harsh for him. He suffered a lot. And by this time, I was getting ready to go to college, and there was no income. There was no, but because I qualified for student aid, qualified for Pell Grant, for California grants, I was able to go to college. And so that's what informed my deep commitment to this profession, is that experience of seeing my father struggle with how he was not able to provide for us anymore, how it was really hard for him for us to rely on public assistance. And this was in late 70s, early 80s, and back then, if you remember, President Reagan's his way of helping poor people was to take all this government cheese out of all these caves where it was being stored, and just give it to the poor. Yeah. So we had government cheese in our house, and that helped us. But again, it informed me of what a well thought out and intentional government program could do to permanently get people out of poverty, and not help me in the most direct way, right? And I was able to get a degree, and I got a degree in international relations because I wanted. Back then, the Cold War was still very much hot. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It was hot. Yeah. And with the Soviet Union, and then that got resolved in some ways in the early 90s. And then I'm here with an international relations degree in Fort Collins. So
your experiences have really shaped you as a person. So growing up, you wanted to help students as well. So coming up as your undergraduate degree and going through international relations, what was your experience like at in college? Was CSU your first college of choice, or where did you go somewhere else?
No. So I grew up in East County, San Diego, and Monte Vista High School. That's where I went, and it's hard for. These are the reminders of how old I am, because I'm always like to the youngest. You don't remember this, right? So you don't remember the Cold War, but our contempt and hate for the Soviets and the Soviet Union it was so deep that's what informed the national debate about what do we want to, how do we fight a war, who are our enemies, and because of that, I always wanted to be someone who was an agent for bridging those gaps and creating peace, and so that informed my desire to then make a difference through that, and so yeah.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, and so yeah.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if I didn't answer your question. No.
Oh no, it did. You did. You again, a lot of what you experienced and a lot of what you've gone through, you really have reflected and have been intentional about your work.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like.
Right.
When we're talking about students of first generation, and you reflecting on your experiences, what was kind of your first kind of dealing with that? What was either a position that kind of started helping you, or not even helping you, but even starting to
Sure.
work with students directly on that?
Well, let me go back.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story about food and about burritos.
Absolutely. I want to hear this. Yeah. This is.
So, we're still back in Mexico, and I'm the youngest. So our eldest brother, Alfredo, he was gonna go to college. So we lived in Baja, which is the peninsula that is sort of removed from Mexico City, which is the capital. And in Mexico, Mexico City is the capital of everything: cultural, educational, government. So he wanted to go to the Universidad Nacional de Mexico, UNAM. And so it was like a bus. He had to take the bus. We didn't have money to send him on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of, I think it was 2 or 3 nights that he had to be on that bus. So my mom cooked all this food that morning for him to take, right?
Yeah.
So all these, she made these amazing homemade flour tortillas along with shredded beef. And if you, and it's what the Puerto Ricans call the ropa vieja.
Oh yeah.
Which is like that shredded beef, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's just amazing. It's just tender.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's good.
So she just made a huge batch of those, and she when he's getting on the bus, she just gives him all this food that I thought we were gonna, like, when we come back, eat that, but she doesn't. So I was thinking that's my first thinking. Okay, so I want to go to college too.
Yeah. That motivated you right
That's
there.
right.
That was motivation.
If she cooked all the food and give it to him, then I want to go to college, so I can get food as well. Now, you know, the promise of burritos that does not sustain a college dream, right? There's much more to it. So.
Oh, sure.
But that was now. The other things, when I was in undergrad, well, let me go back to my senior year. As a student, I did pretty well.
Yeah.
I was a schoolboy. I'm pretty nerdy. I was in AP classes, and I was a band geek. You know, I played the saxophone.
Oh,
and,
saxophone, right on.
I was in the marching band for my freshman year in high school, and
right on.
I also was a little bit of a jock. I did varsity soccer. I did varsity cross country, and so all that to say that I have pretty good credentials.
Yeah.
Especially for a kid who just had come from Mexico about 6 years before that. So,
yeah.
But October of my senior year, I am talking to my friend whose dad had a college degree, and whose dad had taken us to taken me along with him, but my one and only college fair, and where I got some brochures and pamphlets from the Naval Academy, from Montana State, and all that. Yeah. But here we are in November 1st, and we're having lunch. My friend's name is Chris, so Chris is telling me, "Oh, did you apply for Cal Poly?" And I said, "No." He says, "Well, the deadline was the end of October." And I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness!" Yeah. And that was like the major that I wanted, and architectural engineering. And I thought, well, okay, then after that, I didn't do anything. And there was no advisor, no counselor from my high school came to me and say, "Hey, look, here's a Mexican kid with high GPA and AP classes." Nobody said, "Oh, what are your plans?" Nobody came to me. So then I just defaulted to going to a community college, and which was not, and ended up being a good thing. But as we know, if you go to community college, the rate for first-gen students to then come out of that and transfer are just so low, right? It's much better to plus, it was just depressing as heck. It was shitty.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, because there was not the student life that, looking back, I know why I was miserable, because there was no meaningful connections that I had. Yeah. And then when I transferred to a 4-year university, oh my gosh. Difference. Yeah. Totally difference. I got to, and plus, it was an international university, truly international. So I had a chance to then study in London as part of that college experience. I met a lot of good friends. It was just people from all over the world. And of course, I would be remiss to say, if I didn't mention that that's where I met the person who would become my wife and the mother of my children. So yes, okay. Yeah. So that is so. And in fact, Bernadette, who I met there, was from Fort Collins, and then she decided to move back to Fort Collins. And I said, "Hey, I can join you there later on. Yeah. I'll finish my degree and I'll join you in Fort Collins." So finished my degree, packed up everything I own in this little hatchback, and here I was. Soon after that, I got my job at CSU in December of '88 as a counselor, and that was amazing. I got to drive around all over northern Colorado to talk to students, high school, middle school students, tell them about college, why they should go, and but it was getting that grant off the ground. So my training was, here's a 3-inch thick grant proposal. Page 99 has the implementation part, and page. But then it was, I learned through trial and error what works, at least with my approach. So I knew with my approach was, if I'm being in charge of getting students to really open up their minds about the possibilities, with my style, I couldn't go into the classroom and do that. It just wasn't me. It did turn out not to be my style. So my style was, I'm going to get you out of where you are. I'm going to get you in a van or a bus, and I'm going to take you places, and that will create this, open up all these opportunities so you can see what's available. So we would go to Denver or other places to visit colleges and museums, and but there was always a hook, right? Especially with middle school students.
Absolutely.
Take it to what was it? Casa Bonita.
Oh yeah. Right. And it was still a draw.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, I'm sure to a middle school student, they're not saying, "Okay, you know what, Oscar, the food sucks there. I'm not gonna go." No, all they were thinking about is, "I'm gonna get out of class. I'm gonna get out of this boring class, and then go on this, and then So that's where I found out that was the hook. And in fact, I then have taken that to almost the extreme in my years since, which is, not only do I take students now out of their city or out of the state, I take them out of the hemisphere, out of the country. So I teach in the student affairs program, and So we go to places like Morocco.
I read, yeah.
Yeah, Morocco and Korea and Vietnam, and so and it works.
Yeah.
We all know it works, right? And I think particularly with first gen students is that you are seeing the world like you never have before, and then you can have those conversations about, okay, what does this mean? How does this relate to your identity? How does this relate to your goals? How does this relate to your what do you want to be in 10, 15 years?
Yeah.
And, yeah. So that's how I found my way of working with students who are first gen. It's is in some ways is very quite specific, right? It's not. I'm not good about academic support. In fact, I was a very perhaps not a typical student. I didn't have good study habits. I did everything at the last minute, so I didn't have that background to say, look, plan your, and yeah. So that's how I made it work for me. I connected what I love and what worked for me with how I then help students see the world.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And through those traveling journeys, your students must have made a lot of connection with you and with the program, and have been able to expand their horizons.
Yeah.
Does it one trip in particular stick out with you in mind that you feel that's most memorable?
Yeah. I think the first one, because it like anything, as one that is, I'm at my age now, I'm just like always preaching or saying, you know, try this, try that. It's always about the first step. So back when I was no, I think I was assistant director of talent search, and I wanted my program that was only 4 years old, and we wanted to take it to the next step. We wanted it to be more high profile. Mm-hmm. We wanted students to say, I want to be part of the program. So we thought, why don't we've never been out of state, why don't we rent a bus and go down to New Mexico? And we didn't have much money, and we stayed I remember in Albuquerque, through the goodness of some church, we stayed in their basement, right? Which is unheard of now. It's like, oh my gosh, you stay in their basement.
Right.
You need to stay at Amelia now. It's like, how horrible. You're gonna. But back then, we made it happen just on a shoestring budget, and the students loved it. It connected the students to the program, to the advisors, and that's when I said, oh my gosh, even though we just barely made it happen, the return of investment, which is incredibly, because then, well, first of all, you're on the bus with like 6 hours.
Oh yeah. It's a 6 hour trip, right?
So the students can't ignore you, right? So you develop this.
Yeah,
you gotta talk to me. You have to talk to me about your goals. You have to talk to me about what your life interests are. Tell me about your family, and that can happen. So that was the magic that I discovered. So it can happen on a bus. It can happen on a subway ride when we're in Seoul, South Korea, when we're coming back from something. Mm-hmm. At 3 in the morning because of whatever, and then those are the magical moments where being in out of your element, mm-hmm. and in a way that you can think broadly, and then you find those points of connection.
Absolutely.
And so that magic is not necessarily that happens on trips, but for example, in Upper Bound, that happens during the summer program.
Oh yeah.
When you are relating to students over a long period of time, where you go rafting, or mm-hmm. so that's my style. It's just do stuff. Yeah. Because if I need to sit in front of you and tell you about the fast fight, you gonna throw.
Glaze over.
Yeah, glaze over.
Why are you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I remember my experiences with Upward Bound and talking to my director. I think, and I just want to emphasize your point. Yeah, those moments of clarity for me came during those trips.
Right.
It's like, I do want to pursue education. I do want to go outside of my house and do other things. I don't want this to be the rest of my life. I want it to mean something more. Mm-hmm. And and those moments of clarity for a lot of students do come with those trips, and not just those trips, but forming those connections with advisors. What would be something that you would emphasize, I mean, to your colleagues or to anybody that's advising students, something that they could say to make that connection to first-generation students who may not necessarily know, like, I don't know how to approach an advisor about talking to them about my goals and aspirations?
Yeah. I would say
that was kind of a loaded question.
No, it's important. I think to find the best way for you to be yourself. And I know there's a lot of advisors who can go into the schools and in that environment be able to connect and be great advisors. They don't need these extra things they don't need to take them places, right?
Right.
And if that's your style and if that's your strength, then go for it and don't feel like you need to do anything else. I think when students come back and visit us once they are graduated, they tell you, they remember people. They don't remember necessarily remember an academic session, or they remember Juan, or they remember Sean, or they remember Carmen, they remember Paul, they remember Oscar. They remember that person that person, and that's what the program means to them is the person, not necessarily that the program has these objectives and the program provides this kind of support or a stipend. They remember a person. Exactly. So to the extent that that advisor can make that connection, then go with that, and don't compare yourself, because if there's another advisor that is doing this and that, and because I remember those days, like you always like comparing yourself. Oh my gosh, so and so can go in and just razzle dazzle the students with telling jokes and presenting this career workshop in a way that is just amazing. Mm-hmm. And I always felt that less than because of that. But if I was to go back, I would just say, you know what, sure, great, power to that person, but here's how I contribute, and here's how I can help. So just find who you are, your approach, and be good with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you've developed this style that you brought into your position. What have you done since to really either expand on the number of students you're serving, or have addressed other populations that are still underserved?
Yeah. So as I grew into more positions of authority and power and title and all that, I became more of a administrator. So became a bureaucrat, but I used that to well, first of all, I'm glad I was an advisor and assistant director, because you never forget what it's like to drive for 2 hours to Fort Morgan, to Brush, or drive an hour and a half to Commerce City early in the morning to go meet with students. They have to do that, a long drive, then go to the school. It is hard work. It is hard work. And because I never forgot that, I was able to then create support for the spaces I was leading. Yeah. So provide opportunities for the advisors, celebrate them, taking out. I always joke about, hey, you've done so much work, I'm going to reward you with a steak sandwich. So that became like my... Now they tease me and say, Oscar, you owe me 300 steak sandwiches. So. but I always wanted to do that. It's like, for all the hard work that you're doing, goodness, there's got to be places to celebrate.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Places to celebrate. So I brought that lens to my leadership within leading Access and TRIO programs. The other thing is I worked to find more money, because that was part of the job, is more resources from CSU, mm-hmm. more resources from the federal government, from donors, from that. And I think one that I then perhaps I could have done a better job is integrating what we do more fully into what the university does. And so, but now there's a lot of those through leadership of other folks who are doing wonderful work, have brought the ethos of Access and land grant mission of serving and to some extent I'm doing that right now through the First Generation University Initiative, is to how do we help the university do more, or how to help units and divisions and colleges be more intentional about how they engage first-gen students.
Yeah.
And here's where we are 30 years later. I think when I was hired because I had the background, the skills, and the commitment, but not necessarily any tangible experience doing that particular job because that grant was brand new. So there were a lot of trial and error. I did, believe me, a lot of errors, a lot of trials and a lot of errors. But eventually we did find a great curriculum, a great way to engage students, and then I hire some really cool staff that was able to then be great. Right now, my thought is that's where we are at CSU. There's commitment. There's perhaps some resources, not a lot,
Yeah.
but it is where do we start doing the trial and error, and I think that's what the scary part is, because who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Right.
The scary part is that failure aspect. It's,
Right.
It's having to learn from that and moving on. I think that a lot of I want to not only at CSU, but there's a general kind of feeling across the board where if you have to take an initiative, what if you fail at that initiative?
Yeah.
It doesn't get taken up again.
Yeah, and the boss will say, "See, I told you," or the university will say that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's all high risk and no reward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to change that, is to say, for administrators or the boss to say, we're going to do this and I'm going to support you no matter what.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, we're going to try it differently next time, or we're going to do something different and keep trying. Because right now, there are things happening all around the university. There's open houses or pizza parties or meet the dean, which are wonderful, great.
Right.
But how do we do that in a more intentional way? And also, how do we take it to the next level, right? How do we, and how we coordinate all that?
Yeah. I think that also can be related to students that, first-generation students that are afraid to fail. And when they're going through the first 2 years of college and they get their motivation just saps from them,
Right.
or they don't feel like that this is worth their time anymore. So we can almost make that parallel of students who are also taking their own initiative. This is college, this is their first try,
Mm-hmm.
and that fear of failure of if I don't succeed at this, then I'm going to get labeled by my own family as a complete failure. And I think
Sure.
you can almost draw parallels between two,
Yeah.
about the first generation staff who I'm ready to do this. I
Yeah.
want to do this,
Right.
and versus students that are this is their first time in college, and this is a kind of like a make or break moment for them.
It is. It's like, yeah. If you don't have the full backing of the people who are helping you with this, then you're less likely to take a chance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So you've held a lot of positions not only within CSU but outside of CSU. I've read that you also served as a part of the Council for Opportunity and Education.
Yeah.
How was that experience like?
It was awesome. It was. So thanks to early mentoring from my bosses and including Paul Thayer, who said this: if you're gonna work for Trio, it's just more than a job, right?
Yeah.
You need to be committed at different, deeper levels. And so I took that to heart, and I was involved at the state level, at the regional level, at the national level, and because of that, over the years, my commitment to the profession was clearly evident at the national level. But that was building my body of work. I was nurturing, and I was good at what I was doing. Right.
Yeah.
I was strong in advocacy and developing programs. So that was recognized at the national level. But I got the opportunity to be the chair of the board of directors, which oversees the Council for Opportunity and Education.
Wow.
And so that's it's equivalent of it's being the president of your profession, right? Of what you do, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big honor. I think though, early in my career I had aspirations for it. So the ego place, and it didn't work out because of things. And then all of a sudden, I get this call and saying, "Dude, we need you to run." And then I got another call, and then I got a meeting, and then I just got just accosted by all my peers. You got to run. You got to run. And I did. But what helped was that I'd had probably for the previous 5 or 6 years had done work outside of TRIO and had worked with NASPA, which is Student Affairs, and I did their international symposium. I was part of their knowledge communities and gained a lot of different ideas how they did their conferences. So I brought all those ideas to my leadership position at COE and was able to bring in a lot of those elements to COE that, like communities of practice. I helped develop the first in the nation graduate certificate program that focuses on college access and success. Mm-hmm. So those are CSU credits that the people earn, and if they complete the 15 credits, they get a certificate program on college access and success.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So I helped.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So along with my colleague Andrew Reeve and others, we developed that, and so yeah. So that was good. I a lot of time away from family and the office. So those are the consequences of doing that. So things get neglected, and so there's always something that you pay for when you come back from all that. But one heck of an experience. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Paul Thayer. I was told by Upward Bound colleagues that we should have a future podcast episode with you two because you have a ton of stories that you're able to share. So I heard that you all go way back, so it'd be interesting to have you on a future podcast with you and Paul Thayer.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot more stories than I do.
You have plenty of very good stories.
No, he's awesome. No, he is a legend. So and I was very fortunate to be hired by him and be mentored by him. So yeah.
As we're talking about this Let's Talk Trio podcast and expanding it, you had mentioned, I recall one of our early conversations when we were talking about the podcast, you said, how about expanding this? So I've been giving that a lot of thought and expanding this podcast to probably Let's Talk Trio to expand it to first generation students or even students or just to expand it to something about college access. For me, that's something that is still kind of a pressing issue for me, that I still want to give voice to students and allow them to express themselves on a podcast. But for you, looking back and seeing all the body of work that you've done, can you point to a specific position or particular initiative that you're most proud of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good question. Let me start with the Global Access Program and Global Access Award, and this ties back to expanding beyond TRIO, right? So we have our colleague here at Colorado State, Tom Bescheid, who's the Director of Financial Aid, which, by the way, financial aid and TRIO started in the very same place, Title V.
Oh, no way.
Title IV.
Title IV?
Title IV, Higher Education Act.
Yeah.
Title IV, Section 2 is Talent Search, and Section 1 is a program that later became the Pell Grant, right? So, So Tom, Director of Financial Aid, through some really good work, he was able to do he implemented some additional ways to find out who truly is eligible for financial aid, that then created some savings to the university, and by now allowing people who don't qualify for that financial aid. So that allowed for this pool of money to be available, and from that he said, hey, anybody has any ideas about what we can do with that money? And of course submitted an idea of, why don't we create some money that's set aside to students who are Pell first gen who want to study abroad but need money focused on that.
Yeah.
So then we created the Global Access Award specifically for that. So the students need to do certain things, right?
Yeah.
Get the passport, be part of a community that learns about that. So now
That's
is
awesome.
Yeah. So I believe so much in that as I'm retiring, I'm promising the university some money out of my estate to go towards the global access.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's the Felix Global Access Program, and so that's money that we owe to Pell students.
Yeah.
Who want to have a study abroad experience. Again, connecting those two things that I feel passionate about, which is an international experience for first-generation Pell students.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm a little stunned because you said as I'm retiring, and that kind of stunned me a little bit. I'm like, wait a minute, no way, that is not happening already.
Yeah, it's happening in 4 weeks.
No, what?
Yeah.
It feels like I just got to know you, and I'm feeling like that we've been meeting a little bit more, and I've really just been drawn to your story and drawn to the work that you've done at CSU. So that's what stunned me.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, what? No.
No. I'll still be around in some ways. So I teach in the student affairs in a higher education program.
Yeah.
So I'll be still teaching in that, and also I'll be teaching a class for Key.
Okay.
And this class is that will lead to a field experience to the Dominican Republic.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
I'll be doing a couple of things here.
Yeah.
So you'll be seeing me around. I keep saying that hopefully not like the dude that hangs out around the parking lot after graduating from high school.
Yeah.
You know that.
You're that guy.
Yeah, that guy's like, what's he doing here?
I've heard that you're doing semester abroad, or the semester at sea, sorry.
Semester at sea, right.
Next semester.
Yeah, so my last day at the university is December 31st. On January 1, I get on a plane to fly to San Diego, along with my wife Bernadette, and then we embark.
Amazing.
On January 2nd, and then our daughter is going to join us as well.
That's
amazing. So it's amazing. 12 ports.
Yeah.
And 4 months out there on the seas and learning, and so it's amazing. People say it's life-changing.
Yeah.
So retirement is already life-changing, so semester at sea will probably be that as well.
Yeah. So
I'll come back May 1, and I'll just be walking the earth, I guess.
Yeah, that's amazing. Dr. Oscar Felix, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the story that you've shared. This has been an amazing story to hear, just to hear you from your humble beginnings to developing all these programs at CSU and expanding outside of that as well. Yeah. So you've done an amazing body of work. So and
before we leave, I just want to acknowledge we did this in front of a live audience, so we had Alicia Sprague. Alicia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alicia.
It was an honor.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you heard bags rustling or running up and down, that was Alicia taking care of things in the background. This was an amazing episode, Dr. Felix. So hopefully we can have you again on a future episode. I think we agreed that once you step off foot. No. Once you get off the semester at sea, do another follow-up interview at sea and just really talk about your experiences there.
Yeah, talk more stories.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Juan.
Absolutely. Thank you. What a fantastic interview we just had with Dr. Oscar Felix. It made me reflect on my own experience as a first-generation student and how much that means to many students currently listening, to the staff members also listening and impacting those lives. It's such an inspiration, right, to hear this story of resilience and grit, and to know that you're not alone. To the students that are listening, you're not alone in this experience. Being a first generation, being low income, being whatever label people put on you, you're a pioneer in your family. You're the one going out and venturing into unknown territory. I want to let you know that you're not alone in this, and we can certainly know that there's a lot of support out there for you to see you through college, to make sure that you attain a post-secondary education. And it's not just important that students attain a college degree. I think it's also important that students identify what they're passionate about. More often than not, I think students are guided into saying, oh, just major in anything, major in whatever. But I think you still truly need to find your passion. For me, it was broadcasting, it was communication. And it still led me to a path of education through TRIO, and then through the position that I hold at Colorado State University as the Outreach and Support Success Coach. for me, it's important for students to feel supported. So that's what my takeaway was from this interview. Was I left inspired. I left with a greater knowledge of trio. And again, Dr. Oscar Felix just provided a phenomenal interview, and we just really enjoyed it. So the clicking in the, that you heard in the background was we did have an additional guest, and as you heard in the podcast, but it was very enjoyable to have that, to have someone there and listening to the story as well. I just enjoyed it. It was thoroughly enjoyable. So for next episode, we will get the panel, the first generation panel at Colorado State University, featuring Dr. Oscar Felix, Dr. Paul Thayer, Marilyn Thayer, and Andrea Reeve. I look forward to uploading that episode pretty soon for you all. And again, it was an exciting panel conversation, and just hearing the origins of trio and the key words of first generation, what that meant, I think does provoke some conversation. So I hope you all enjoy. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you share. Make sure you talk about this podcast. Share it with many others. Again, we are as a non-profit podcast. All I'm seeking is just funding for equipment upkeep and compensating my producers and the collaborators who put all this together. That way, we keep this show and this episode with the highest quality and integrity as possible. So that's it. Thank you all very much for listening. I will catch you next time.